Hi, I'm Craig Hajduk. I'm a program manager on the FrontPage client, and today I'm happy to be showing you the new features and the new functionality that we've put into FrontPage 10. There are really three categories of features. The first are all the tools and the ways that we let you create great content, to create it quickly and to have control over what you create. The second set that I'm going to show you is some of our site management tools, which are unparalleled in the field and allow you to both get information about how visitors are using your content, as well as get information about where that content's placed and how often it gets published. And then the third group of features I'm going to show you has to do with SharePoint, which is a web collaboration application that's database-driven that allows you to create database-driven websites using the FrontPage client. So let's go ahead and take a look at FrontPage itself. I've booted it up here on the laptop, and this is the screen that users will see when they first start the application. A couple things to point out right off the bat. Of course, it looks like Office applications. If you're used to using Word or Excel, you'll be very comfortable in FrontPage. We've done even more integration with those other applications so that users will intuitively know how to step through the features and feel comfortable in them. On the right-hand side, there's a work pane that groups the tasks that users need to go to get started when they first boot up the product. I can create a new blank page or an empty web, or if I come down here, I can create a website using one of our website templates. Now, this functionality is as it was before in earlier versions. I can create a customer support web and say OK. And at this point, FrontPage will create a navigation structure, create individual HTML files, and bring that together with graphical elements to create an entire web in the location that I specified in the dialog. If you look here on the left-hand side, the user gets to see in the folder list a list of all the files that were created. And as soon as FrontPage is done creating the web, I can double-click on the home page, as indicated here by index.htm with a small home icon to it. Wasn't that clever of us? When I double-click on it, you can get an idea of the content that we've created right out of the box for the user. It includes the things like graphical elements and texts. They can now begin customizing. Now, one of the ways users, of course, customize the website is they start typing. And in this case, we work a lot like Microsoft Word. You can select, you can bold, you can italicize, and behind the scenes, FrontPage is, of course, writing out the HTML that you'd expect. Now, if you come down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we have a button for HTML view that allows the user to see exactly what's being created. Now, it's important to notice, and some people in the field still have the impression that FrontPage might be changing the HTML. Well, let me be really clear that FrontPage writes out very clean, very simple HTML, and if you import HTML in from, let's say, Notepad, or you change the page with another authoring tool, FrontPage will not modify that HTML. We preserve your formatting. Now, if you want to take a look at what your page is going to look like before you save it, you can click on the Preview tab. And this will show you what that page looks like in Internet Explorer. If you save the page, we have the ability to show you what that'll look like in any browser that you choose, including Navigator. Now, let's switch back to the normal view and continue our customization. All these graphical elements are bundled up in something called a theme. And FrontPage allows you to format that theme using a very simple dialog. Now, a lot of you that have used FrontPage in the past know that we shipped with themes before, and some of them were very graphical in nature. For example, like this nature theme that maybe indicated what the website was about. Now, for this release of FrontPage, we've added a host of new themes that are a little more slimmed down in nature, maybe a little more business-like, like, for example, the network theme. That's the one I'm going to pick for the web today. Now, if I wanted to continue modifying this theme, I could come down to the Modify button, where I could change the colors, the graphics, and the text. I could, over on the left-hand side, even apply it using CSS, or in this case, a background picture, and choose to apply it to all or selected pages in the web. I'm going to go ahead and apply it to all pages in the web and say OK. At this point, FrontPage will prompt me just to make sure I do want to make this big design change, in other words, changing all the pages in my web. And now it'll walk the entire web, and it'll remove the graphics from the old theme and substitute the new ones in its place. And as soon as FrontPage is done doing this, it will update the page that I'm viewing right now in the normal view. And you can see that it's just finished that process. So again, it gives the user a lot of control about how they want their website to appear. At the same time, it can do things very quickly. So now what I would like to do is go ahead and create a page in my website to showcase the people that are answering my customer support telephone calls. I want to show their pictures so people kind of get more of a feeling of human interaction when they call us. And to do that, I want to see how all the pages in my website relate to one another so I can add the new page in the appropriate place. Now, FrontPage has had navigation information to show how users link between the different pages for more than a couple releases. Now, what we've done is made it easier to access that information if you look on the lower left-hand side of the screen in a navigation button. So now all the pages that are linked together show up in the navigation pane while I'm editing the page. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on the web and add a new page. You can see that FrontPage added it right here in the navigation pane. I'm now going to rename that and call it Support Team, because that's what I'm going to be showcasing. Now, when I go ahead and double-click on this page, it's going to open it up in the normal view. And I want to point out a couple things to you when this happens. First of all, here's the page that I just created. Notice that FrontPage was smart enough to realize that I already had graphical information for the website, so it brought it onto this new page. Also notice at the top of the page we now have tabs that allow you to switch back and forth between pages quickly and easily, allowing you to maintain a consistent look and feel and borrow content from other pages. Again, it's just another instance of where we save you time. So now I want to start inserting those photographs onto the page. Specifically, what I'm going to showcase is the faces that are behind the voices of our customer support folks. Now, normally this is a pretty big design challenge and work item. I need to import the files into the web. I need to make thumbnails of them, link them together to the main images. It's really kind of a pain. However, in this version of FrontPage, we allow you to insert pictures directly into something called a photo gallery. Once I'm inside the photo gallery, I can add pictures from a scanner or camera or from files. I get to select them all at once. So for example, if I want to add these 5, I can select them at once and say open. They'll get moved into the photo gallery where I can change their thumbnail information, or I can add caption and description information. In this case, we're just going to add their names. I can choose the layout of how I want the pictures to appear. You can see we have some text-focused layouts like horizontal and vertical, which are great for showing products or catalogs. Something like montage, which has no text, but is very artistically grouped in the center of a page or an area. And slideshow, which really focuses on the large image at the bottom. That's the one that we're going to pick because we want to highlight their photographs. At the point at which I say OK, FrontPage now automatically generates the thumbnails, and it goes ahead and wraps them up into one object that gets dropped into the page. I'm going to go ahead and save this page so I can show you the clean look in the browser. Also point out to you that when I save the page, FrontPage will automatically now move those pictures into the web and embed them into the web for me. So it's done a whole host of things automatically for me that I used to have to do manually before. Now if I go to the File menu and I say Preview in Browser, we can come down here to the browser and take a look at the page, and you'll see that it's a very clean look that allows my users to navigate quickly and easily between all the different photographs. I just saved a lot of time in doing a complicated design task by using FrontPage. Now, more areas of customization I can show you when we flip back here to the index page using the tabs at the top of the page. Since this is a customer support web, and it's a technology-focused website, let's say, for example, I may want to add things like technology headlines from MSNBC right into my website. That's normally not something that's accessible to most users. However, in this version of FrontPage, you can insert web components that draw content from a host of external sources, for example, B-Central or Expedia or MSN, or in this case, MSNBC. I can come to the MSNBC portion of the menu and grab technology headlines, and at the point that I say finish, a component gets put into the website that is always live, draws content from the MSNBC server, and displays it right on my page. I didn't have to do any special sign-up. I simply had to choose to insert it into the page. Now, that's going to be great for a lot of users to put things on their pages, but it's also great for content distributors as well and people who are building components. So, for example, some of your customers may be corporations that want to be able to have people put components that show headlines from their finance department or from their sales department onto their internal websites. This technology is extensible, which means that those departments could build simple text files that users could then install onto a special directory on each of the client machines to allow them to put these components on their website. So this could say, for example, Microsoft Finance or Microsoft Sales, all on websites that I generate in FrontPage. Now, in addition to this graphical content, users also came to us with a lot of requests for being able to put drawn objects onto their onto their pages. And specifically what they wanted to do is be able to manipulate pictures a little better and be able to integrate that with some drawn objects and some text over top of that. And here's an example of the type of application that they asked us for and that we delivered. If I select the picture of Anne here from the folder list and I drag it onto my page, I can then resize it easily, shrink it down to something a little more appropriate. I can choose to resample it so it downloads a little quicker. And then at this point, I can go ahead, I can insert a picture that actually is an auto shape that I'm used to using in, for example, Word, and come down to the auto shape menu and pick from lines, block arrows, or in this case, callouts. I'm going to pick a simple callout, drag and drop on my editing surface, and type some text. This kind of overlay of graphics and text is pretty complicated, not something that most users could do on their own. But FrontPage makes it point and click easy for me to, for example, alter the shape, even fill with the color from the theme, or provide a drop shadow. It's all just that easy for me to do, and the layout is correct on the page. So again, we've simplified the task of getting great content where you want it. Now, this is just a kind of a brief overview of some of the major highlights of our editing features. We've done a lot of other work in, for example, how we treat tables. We've given users more flexibility in how they put hyperlinks on their pages and what they look like. But hopefully this gives you an idea of some of the power that the new version of FrontPage now offers users. So now that I've created all this great content, I want to switch roles a little bit. Now I want to put this content up on a website where other people can see it and where I can get access to it. And there are a couple of different ways in which I want to do it. One of them is really geared at kind of the at a developer who might be using FrontPage because it's a way to prototype things rapidly. So when they are using our publish functionality to put things up on servers, they don't want to have to publish the entire web, but just the individual pages that they're working on. Well, we've added that functionality in FrontPage. Users can now come to the folder list, select one or a number of different files, right-click on those files, and say Publish. And at that point, FrontPage will take you to a familiar Publish dialog and allow you to say OK. And at that point, we'll simply execute the publish, move those files to the destination where you want them, and you're done. Very fast, very easy. Now, on the other hand, if you wanted to publish the entire website, you can come up to the File menu and say Publish Web. This will prompt you to save any pages where you have some changes. In this case, we're going to save Anne's picture onto this page. And now it's going to bring up it's going to probably, there's a couple more pages from the, it's going to make sure that I save everything that I want. And now it's going to bring me into the Publish dialog. Now, the Publish dialog is a lot different than what you saw in earlier versions. It gives you a lot more information and a lot more control about what you're doing. Notice on the left-hand side, I have a pane that shows me all the files in the current web. Green check marks indicates that the files will be published. Now, if you remember, I moved 3 files over to the destination before from the folder list. You'll notice that the status here is up to date. They won't get moved. Now, let's say that because I'm working in an environment where many people are working on this site, that I actually don't want to publish these files in the future. I can select those files, right-click, and say, don't publish them. And again, we'll make it very clear with a big red X, those are not getting published. If I want to drag and drop one file over to the destination, I can grab it, drag it, and drop it. It's that easy to publish. Now, on the other hand, when I do want to go ahead and publish the entire web, FrontPage will execute that publish functionality as it did in previous version, doing great things like link fix-up for you so you don't break hyperlinks, and prompting you, for example, when you're going to be replacing files or merging navigation changes to make sure that you're successful in your publish operation. Still, a lot of users, and probably some of your customers too, were saying that this was still a nebulous process. They weren't sure when publishing was happening, what exactly was happening, even though we were giving you some updates here in the status bar, because network connections can be unreliable sometimes. Well, what we've done in this case is created a log file that I'll click on here. When I open this up, this log file gives you information about every single action, let me maximize it, that FrontPage did during the publish operation. And you can see that it's color-coded as well. I can use this drop-down menu to see only the publish starts, if that's what I'm interested in, or I can see all the file deletions, which are highlighted in red, or I can just see all files if I want. This means that I no longer have to surf to my destination web and verify that all the files got moved up there if anything's in doubt. I can simply come to the log file and see evidence of exactly what the publish operation did. So again, we're giving you more control and more information about managing your website. Now, in addition to that, once content has been published up to a website, the next question is, well, how are my customers or how are my users using my website? What part needs help? What part might need some more improvement, and what's working well? Well, we now give you that information as part of FrontPage in usage analysis. Now, since this is a brand new web, there's no usage analysis to show you here. I actually need to go ahead and open up a new web that has usage analysis so I can demonstrate it for you. So we'll give this a second to open up. This is a website that a stage lighting company might use to kind of explain what it does and what its business is to people. So let's go up here to our reports view. In earlier versions of FrontPage, we had a very rich reporting section that would give you information, for example, about the files in your website, what was added recently and what was older, problems that you had, like broken hyperlinks or pages that were slow to load that you might want to fix. We've now added this entire section for usage information, giving you information by the month, by the week, and by the day about who's hitting what on your site. Let's go to daily page hits to give you an example of the type of things that we have. So here is a list of all the files in the website and what hits have been generated off them. And you can notice on the right-hand side that they're categorized by day. And because I did this as a demo, and I did it fairly quickly, that most of the hits are all on one day, and they're listed in this total hits column here. Now, you can imagine that in a large website, this is a lot of information, just like a lot of our reports views can show you a lot. So if you come up here to the top, we've given you an ability to filter down to just the information you want. For example, in type, I could choose to only see the HTML files, and I could choose to only see the files that had 24 hits. We also extended the flexibility of this to make it work like Excel's auto filters and allow you to apply a custom filter. So I could, in fact, enter a range of dates or a range of files or even strings for beginning and end, all making the reports view customizable and much more useful to me than it ever has been in the past. Now, we realize how important the usage information is going to be to users and how they will be tracking things not just like page hits, but even referring domains and search strings that people are using to try and visit their site. That's useful information not just for the person who's editing FrontPage, but even for users as well. So for example, in a customer support web, I might want to see the top 10 most visited pages or support pages, not have to navigate through the site to do that. So in order to give you that functionality, we allow you to insert a component called a top 10 list. And that top 10 list goes and displays usage information right on your page. Now this is placeholder information. I'd have to be viewing it through a browser to actually get the usage information. You can see that the name of page placeholders are links. They're underlined just like hyperlinks because they are hyperlinks. And you can see the hits on the right-hand side. This would be sorted for the month of December. So it would be a great way to say what are the most important products on my website that people are surfing to, because that would save them time to link to it. I could also create a private page for myself that would say, what are my top 10 referring domains? What are my top 10 search strings? All by using these top 10 components. So now I want to switch a little bit to show you a slightly different product and how it integrates with FrontPage. This is called SharePoint, and and I need to go to the browser for this and type in an address. What SharePoint is a database-driven web application that can be customized from the browser, that can be used for collaboration and a whole host of other things. There's a lot of powerful functionality for it. I think you're probably going to be getting a demo specifically on this at some future point. And I can't possibly cover it all in the time that we've got remaining. But I can kind of give you the highlights about what SharePoint does and how it interacts with FrontPage, because when you put the two together, it becomes a very powerful application. So what SharePoint, as I mentioned before, it's a database-driven website, and it's particularly useful and helpful for team collaboration. You can do things like, if you look up at the top, there's a bar here that'll talk about some of the things you can create, like document libraries that allow you to share documents, discussion boards, and kind of generic things called lists, which could be lists of contacts, a list of announcements, or list of events. And the great thing about SharePoint is it allows you to add content to the website in a way that's organized without having to do a lot of special customization. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go into this announcement section, which is right on the home page. I'm going to click on the link for Add New Announcement. That'll bring me to a form all within the browser that'll let me add something. And in this case, I'm going to add a company picnic. I could enter an expiration date and put in a description of what the event is. In this case, it's just a teaser. When I say save and close, you'll notice that the content that I entered is now displayed right on the home page. I didn't have to create any special hyperlinks. And the hyperlinks that were created, now all my visiting users can come and look at that information. So it's a very quick way to get that information up onto a website. You can imagine whole teams of people just contributing content and this becoming a very powerful, flexible application. Now, the really interesting thing, though, is that I can bring this database-driven website into FrontPage and customize it inside of FrontPage. I'll do that here. I can just simply type in the URL, and open up that website inside of FrontPage. So all those rich editing tools that I have are now available to me in a database-driven web application. And you can see that the WYSIWYG view, or the normal view as we call it, shows me exactly what that site looks like. Things like this announcement list, I can select and I can modify their properties. So for example, I can change the fields that are shown. I can even change what list this is. I may want to change that to my contacts list or something different. And I can even change the look and feel of the site by going back up to Format, Theme. And in this case, it's a very blue-looking site, so I'm going to pick the Edge theme, which is very clean-looking but very yellow. At the point that I say OK, FrontPage will go ahead and change the entire look of that SharePoint site. So again, it's a database-driven web application that can be completely customized in FrontPage to become the application that you want. So I hope I've been able to give you a good overview of some of the things that we're offering. There are some slides that will be available that will kind of be a summary and a backup of a lot of the points that I've covered for you today. So have fun with it. It's a great product, and we're very excited about what it's going to do. And now what I'd like to do is introduce Russell Williams. He's the Group Program Manager of SharePoint and Office Web Server and the FrontPage server extensions and all that other good stuff. And he's going to be talking today about the FrontPage server extensions, how they work with FrontPage, and what's new in this release.
Thank you, Craig. Let's go ahead and bring up some slides. And as Craig mentioned, what I would like to talk to you about today is the FrontPage server extensions, specifically as they apply to the FrontPage product. FrontPage is an interesting product in that it has two parts. It has the client part, which is what the user typically interacts with, and that's what Craig is focused on in his demonstration. But it also has a part that enables a lot of the rich web management. It has a part that runs on the server to accommodate management of metadata about the document. So it's not simply just pushing documents up to a server for then static fetching. It's managing information about those documents so that we can do analysis and so that we can do special reporting. And those are some of the features that Craig showed you. And so fundamentally, FrontPage server extensions enable easy publishing to remote web servers. And today this seems relatively easy, but that's because a lot of the technology has caught up and new standards have been developed. Historically, FrontPage has been the only solution that allows remote publishing to web servers using a HTTP web standard as opposed to an FTP standard that requires extra work or extra protocols beyond web protocols. And so the FrontPage server extensions not only enable that publishing, but like I mentioned, enable rich management and really introduce a web concept to a collection of data files. It's not simply files that you post, it's a collection of information that's managed as a whole. And that includes things like properties on documents that can be used to come out and produce a table of contents lists, fixing up links whenever documents are moved so that link integrity within a web is always maintained and you'll never get broken links just by the act of moving or renaming documents within your web. There's a lot of rich web management functionality, such as the usage reports that Craig demonstrated, showing you what are the pages that are being hit, what are the pages that are not being hit, what are the pages that are particularly slow or large in your web that might need some updating or some tweaking in order to be more functional, where are the broken hyperlinks that point outside of your web. All of that kind of information is indexed and stored by the server extensions. And then lastly, there's a lot of runtime functionality that the server extensions supply that take static websites and really turn them into a dynamic living creature. And that includes features that have been in FrontPage for several releases, such as search and hit counters and discussion boards. And in the future, we're also moving in a direction where the website itself fundamentally is data-driven, and that's the SharePoint concept that Craig demonstrated. And so there is a relationship between the front page server extensions and SharePoint, and that relationship is that the server extensions are a subset, and they're the foundation of what SharePoint is built on. And so we'll be talking about that more in subsequent presentations. Today, though, I want to focus on just the front page server extensions because they are still available as a subset of the entire SharePoint product, and specifically targeted for the front page user who may not be interested in a lot of that very rich dynamic or rich collaboration functionality. And a word about compatibility. The front page server extensions are updated in lockstep with the client. So there's always a new version of the front page server extensions whenever a new front page client is released. So there'll be a new version of front page server extensions for front page 10. And you want to encourage people to use the new version of server extensions with a given client release because you get the best functionality that way. There are features that the client relies on in the server extensions that are implemented on the server, for example, usage analysis, that do not work if you do not have the latest versions of the server extensions. And so it's very important that your clients upgrade to the newest server extensions as well as upgrading the front page client. It is, however, there's a forward and backward compatibility story that does work with the new version of the server extensions as well as older clients. So if you upgrade to new server extensions, your old clients continue to work and there's no change in functionality. If you have old server extensions but a new client, the new client will continue to work, but some of the newer features, such as usage analysis in the case of front page 10, that require new server extensions will be disabled in that case. Because we want to talk about upgrading and the new server extensions, I'm going to focus on the features that are new and different in front page 10 server extensions as opposed to all of the background for front page server extensions 2000 and front page 98 and front page 97. And all of that information is available in the front page resource kit, and I'll be providing a URL later on in the slide deck that you can go to find out more information about general server extensions issues. What I did want to do briefly, though, is describe what the server extensions architecture looks like for those of you who are not familiar with how the server extensions work. This is helpful to know because it can help you debug systems and deploy them effectively in organizations. So at the very top of this diagram, you'll see various clients. And that includes the front page client. It also includes Office clients like Word 2000, Excel 2000, and the web folders features of Office and Internet Explorer and Windows 2000 and Windows 98. And those features, along with Visual InterDev, those clients all use a web-based protocol, what we call FrontPage RPC, which is our means of communicating with web servers for authoring functionality. Beyond just simple getting and posting of information, it actually is doing authoring functionality like save a new doc, get some metadata, recalculate a web, publish a web, apply a new theme. A lot of the features that Craig demonstrated are accomplished over this communication pipe. And that communicates to a web server, either IIS, which is what we encourage and recommend, or if there are people who must use Unix for whatever reason, we also support Unix platforms in the Apache web server. But let's go on with IIS and assume IIS for the rest of this discussion. Underneath IIS is where we extend IIS with the web management and authoring functionality. And that's the core of what the front page server extensions provide. And they're implemented as a set of DLLs that do implement that functionality. They're implemented as ISAPI DLLs, and that's how it communicates with the web server and through the web server to the clients. And those ISAPI DLLs primarily manage the server file system, and that's where all of the web content of a given web is stored. So all of the HTML files, your default.htm, all of the files that FrontPage uploads ultimately end up on the server's hard drive, and that's done via this web-based communication and publishing system. In addition to just the file content itself, the server extensions are maintaining file metadata on that hard drive as well, and that's organized on what we call a per web basis, or per web, and it's just that collection of files that you see when you open up the front page client, grouped together and managed as a single unit. In addition to looking at just the web content, the server extensions are also providing a number of other pieces of functionality. Things such as talking to index server, configuring index server so that it will automatically search your web content on a given web. It communicates with the Windows security database so that you can manage security and who can access your web via the front page client application and the front page server extensions. And it communicates with mail servers, SMTP servers in particular, to be able to send mail in response to features such as posting a form or a web-based form that you author in FrontPage. It's an option to automatically cause that posting to send a piece of email to the owner of the site or whoever you should designate. And there are other examples of email integration within the FrontPage product as well. And over on the left, you also see that FrontPage server extensions are communicating with some other aspects of the web server, specifically what's called the IIS metabase. And the metabase stores information about how the web is configured or how the server is configured. And it basically says, whenever you get a request from a browser for www.fubar.com, send it to this place on the hard drive to go get that content. And so the server extensions help you manage that metabase information or that server configuration information so that whenever you create a new web, whenever you decide to start a new project or create more information and publish that information, we will configure the server for you to expose that information to the world subject to security constraints, and you don't have to understand the details of the server configuration yourself. Additionally, the server extensions also go in and look at and analyze the usage logs, which is a record of who hits the server, whatever external clients are hitting the server and requesting content. The server always records that. FrontPage will help you analyze that. So let's go look at some of the features that are new in the FrontPage 10 server extensions. And first thing that's most noticeable, and probably most noticeable for all FrontPage users, is the HTML administration. Previously, the server extensions have always been kind of a sleeper feature in that they were designed to be looked at by a server administrator, someone who has a lot of understanding of the Windows operating system or the Unix operating system. And we used command line tools, and in the most recent version of FrontPage 2000, we used the Microsoft Management Console as a way of accessing that server extensions functionality. But we realized that there's interesting things that you'd like to do with the server extensions, such as manage security or configure new websites in a very easy and simple way that the Windows tools and the operating system tools are somewhat difficult to use to accomplish those tasks. And so we provided a consistent HTML-based administration system for both server administrators and also for owners of particular sites. And the distinction is people who are server administrators might run the box, and in the case of a box that's used to host multiple webs, they might be an IT person or perhaps a hosting company. The site owners are people who just want to publish their content. They don't really understand or care where the box lives or where the physical server lives. They just care about their particular website. And so we've made the distinction between the two and provided two levels of administration. At the global level, or for the person who owns the box and is the server operating system and web server administrator, those users get a set of functionality that allows them to create new webs whenever new customers sign up or new webs need to be created for internal clients. And it also allows them to set system-wide policies for controlling certain settings of the server extensions, particularly around security, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but also around certain global settings that you might want to turn on or off and disable on a global basis for all of the customers using that website. And then at the site level, we provide individual administration functionality that's unique to each site. So if there are HTTP www.fubar.com and then another one called mycompany.com that are hosted on the same box, those users have individual site administrators for those two sites, and they have unique sets of administration pages that control only that site. And so you can delegate, as a server owner, you can delegate administration privileges to site owners with confidence that they can only affect their particular site and not any other site or user on that physical box. And the primary thing that you'd want to delegate is security management, because that's a common recurring task as users come and go and as sites are updated, to want to change who can access it, who can publish to it, who can author it. And as a server administrator, that continual dribble of changes can become quite onerous. By delegating it and ensuring that only a particular site can be administrated by that delegated site administrator, then you can get out of that business as a server owner. Just let the site owner have that self-service capability. The next thing we want to talk about is improved security flexibility. One common problem with server extensions in past releases was that we had a fairly simple to understand security model, which allowed for browsing, authoring, and administration roles. But what would tend to occur is that in a group context where you had lots of people authoring against a website, or an entire workgroup authoring against a website, then the author role was sometimes too powerful, in that there are global site-wide features and management features of FrontPage that can be performed that could cause the web to be altered in ways that you don't want it to be altered. For example, applying a theme can affect all of the pages of a web. And you might want to restrict who is allowed to apply a theme. You might want to say only the webmaster persons or particularly trusted people are allowed to do those global operations. There are lots of people who can publish individual documents, but they can't do global operations. And so what we've introduced in FrontPage 10 is the concept of multiple rights and then grouping those together and organizing them for management purposes into roles. And those roles are expanded over what was available in FrontPage 2000 and previous releases of FrontPage. They're also customizable. The default roles that we ship with are browser author, advanced author, site administrator, and global administrator or server administrator. And you can define your own spin on what these roles are. You can rename them. You can also define what rights those roles have. And so previously an author would be able to do all authoring operations on the web, including things like changing the theme, adding a link style sheet, which could change how pages look and feel in the site, or changing shared borders, as well as changing security. In FrontPage 10, we've limited that so you can shut off those higher end features and only allow the author to just save documents. And that's entirely customizable again. In terms of implementation of these roles are all available and changed through the site administration HTML pages that we just talked about. Under the covers, they're implemented using NT security groups as an optional feature so that you can use Windows features such as Active Directory to manage these roles remotely. You don't actually even have to touch the front page or the HTML administration tools. You can manage those through your directory process if you should desire to do so. There are some people who don't want to do that. And for those users where you're running a standalone machine or running a machine that's perhaps in a hosted environment, such as at an ISP or an ASP, where there may not be a Windows domain to rely on and a directory infrastructure to use, we also allow for new accounts to be created through our website and through the HTML administration pages. And that's a new feature of FrontPage 10. Again, one that can be turned off and controlled by the global administrator, but it's a very convenient feature to allow self-service security management of websites and get the server administrator out of the business of doing day-to-day, add an account, delete an account, change this access right. That can all be delegated safely to the site owners. Also at a implementation, in terms of implementation, the file system ACLs are still used, and NT security continues to be used as the basis for front page security. And so even though we allow these roles and we have a higher level of security than just file system ACLs, ultimately when the web server gets to the file system and when the front page extensions get to the file system to actually change any content or update content, then NT ACLs are enforced and are used. And so that's a way that for advanced users and advanced server administrators, they can directly manipulate those ACLs. For the user who doesn't care about how it works, they just want to use our straightforward HTML pages or a simpler way of looking at security, we'll manage those ACLs for you in the default case. The last big feature of FrontPage 10 that I'd like to talk about is usage analysis. And so Craig demonstrated a lot of the in-user features that you get out of usage analysis by looking at server hit logs and then analyzing that and aggregating that information for display and reports. Well, the feature in the FrontPage client is very straightforward and presents a nice view of the world. That data starts out being very messy and very large. And so the server extensions add value to usage analysis by analyzing and aggregating that usage information on the server before it ever gets to the client. And what that does is it keeps the amount of data that you're storing and persisting in the website to a very small amount of data as compared to potentially hundreds of megabytes of usage hit logs. And it also keeps the amount of data that you have to download from a remote website, say at a hosted ISP or an ASP, onto your local client, potentially over very slow internet linkage, to a minimum. And so as part of the server extensions, the usage analysis process can be configured and controlled. And we realize that it's important to be able to control that, and for many of your clients it'll be important to control that because it does entail a CPU hit to run that usage and aggregation process. And so we provided a number of ways to control that. It starts off via an NT service or on Unix via a cron-based timer job, and it starts off the analysis process. Our admin pages, in the global admin pages as well as site admin pages, allow users to control whether usage analysis is enabled at all, and that might be a policy that a global server administrator could decide, I just don't care about that feature, or I'm not willing to spend the CPU resources to enable this feature, so I'll just turn it off on a global basis. But assuming they allow it to be turned on, and we believe it should be, then you can control when that usage analysis process runs in terms of what time of the day it runs and also what frequency it runs, whether it's daily or weekly or monthly. And that just basically controls, again, how much resources you're willing to commit. It also controls, of course, the level of aggregation and the level of detail that you get in the usage reports that show up in FrontPage. This information for usage is stored in the web, and that's stored in terms of XML files that exist in the web for storing and communicating web-wide information, such as referrers to the website, or the list of users who have authenticated against that website, and the top page hits, the number of pages over time that, in this week, the top 10 pages. And that's available for all of the web content. There's also per-page metadata that gets stored in the web for each individual page, and that records the hits on that particular page on a daily basis, and also rolls them up on a weekly and monthly basis, and stores the historical information about the hits for that page on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis as well, for a configurable number of days, weeks, and months. So the amount of information that you accumulate is capped and can be controlled by the server administrator. So those are the key features of the FrontPage 10 server extensions. I'd also like to talk briefly about the platform and hosting options of the server extensions. In FrontPage 10, we have a somewhat narrowed platform list, and what we've decided to do is focus exclusively on the most common platforms that are deployed on the web today for hosting webs. And those platforms that we support are NT4 and IS4, Windows 2000 and IS5, which is, of course, the recommended platform for hosting webs, because IS5 and Windows 2000 has a much greater level of scalability than the NT4 platform. And then also in the future, we'll be supporting the Whistler server platform with IS6. And that will be supported fully by the FrontPage 10 server extensions whenever the Whistler release is available. We also support for Unix users, and there are quite a few users, particularly in the hosted environment, the Unix platform, a number of different flavors of the Unix operating system with the Apache 1.x server for web services. And in the future, we'll most likely be supporting the Apache 2.0 features, or a 2.0 release of the Apache server. One change that has happened for FrontPage 10 is that we have decided not to continue supporting Win9x personal web server platforms. And so those personal web servers that used to be used in a peer-to-peer networking situation, or sometimes for prototyping and testing a web on a Win9x workstation machine before publishing it to a official hosting server, those users will now have to upgrade and use a Windows-based or Windows NT-based, Windows 2000-based operating system platform. Win9x and the personal web server will no longer be supported. And additionally, what's not on this list, but other server types that we have supported in the past, such as the iPlanet server and other flavors of Unix web servers, we're also choosing to drop in this release. But given that most of the web is hosted on either IS or on Apache, we don't think that's going to affect most users. Distribution of the server extensions remains the same in FrontPage 10 as it has in past releases. The server extensions are available always in the FrontPage box, of course, but they're also available as a standalone download, so that anybody who wants to use them on any server, be it Unix or Windows NT, can go and get those off of the Microsoft.com website. And additionally, FrontPage server extensions have been bundled in the past with the operating system because they integrate deeply with IIS, because it's natural to want to deploy them with IIS. We've shipped them in the operating system in previous versions in Windows 2000 and Windows NT4. In Whistler, we will also be shipping the FrontPage 10 server extensions integrated into the IIS server setup. And lastly, I want to mention that there are various hosting options, and the FrontPage server extensions support various hosting options for how you deploy them and how you run your websites. And the simplest option, and this is what you would typically see in an intranet situation or in maybe a home or hobbyist situation where you want to do some prototyping or testing, is a single web deployment. And the server extensions there are optimized for simplicity, and you basically shouldn't have to see them in that case. All they do is just silently enable these rich web management functionality and features of the FrontPage client. But in a hosting situation, be it a corporate IT situation or at a hosted internet service provider or application service provider that provides web hosting services as a business, those people want to support multiple webs on a given machine and have a web farm type of deployment. And the FrontPage server extensions also support that model. And that's where you see the global administration pages being very useful, a lot of our automation functionality being very useful. And a lot of the details behind these various hosting options are included in the server extensions resource kit, which I'll have a URL for at the end of the presentation. Wanted to mention SharePoint again. SharePoint, as Craig said, is a team collaborative, dynamic, database-driven functionality for website functionality. And the FrontPage server extensions are the foundation upon which SharePoint is built. So everything that you know about server extensions and all of the functionality that's in the FrontPage server extensions is also directly applicable to SharePoint. SharePoint obviously builds a lot of additional functionality on top of that, and so there are additional administration concerns, which we'll be presenting in a subsequent talk, hopefully in a month or so. But it's not a wasted investment by any means to go ahead and look at FrontPage server extensions now, get users used to that level of web authoring and web management, and then over time step them up into a SharePoint-based environment to add dynamic richness and collaboration functionality to their webs. And as promised, this is the URL at which to find more information about the FrontPage server extensions. And it's basically microsoft.com/frontpage/FPSE. And that document is what we call the FrontPage Server Extensions Resource Kit. And it's a full, probably several hundred pages worth of documentation that goes into concepts behind the server extensions, specific details of security at a conceptual level, also all of the settings, all of the command line parameters, all of the details of day-to-day operation of the server extensions are fully documented and covered in the Server Extensions Resource Kit. And for hosting companies, people who are making a business of providing internet services, we have a special program for those specific users that offers benefits such as paid support and special support for specifically targeted for hosting companies, so they get directly to the information that they need. And that's called the WPP program. And information about that is also available on the FrontPage website on Microsoft.com. But we encourage all hosters who are providing FrontPage service to their customers to join the WPP program. And there are several thousand hosting companies that are already members. So it is a well-established and very beneficial program. That's all I have today on the FrontPage extensions. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. I think that's it for today. Thanks a lot.